The key that I would say is I'll actually open up another version of Visual C# Express because a lot of times it is difficult getting started. One of the differences with C# Express is we actually added documentation for the beginners. So you can actually go through here and it'll tell you, hey, you want to create your first console application or you want to create your first Windows application. And I'll just click the Windows application as an example. And we literally walk you through step by step, creating a new project, designing your Windows form, setting specific values. In this case, we're actually creating a web browser, and we'll have a couple methods for how to go home, backward, forward, and so forth. So we'll literally walk you through the code, and you can copy and paste this code, and we actually have this nice capability that copies our code for you and puts it on the clipboard. So there you can literally, within 5 minutes, walk through and have a created web browser. We also have the same thing for, click back here, for a console application. So if you never created a console application, then we have the full screensaver with the C# Starter Kit. So what I'll do is just jump back to our Windows application and create our first app, and in this case, viewer toolbox, and we'll just dock it to the left here. Let's see, what's a good example? Well, we'll do hello world.
So the form is what the user will see, right?
Yeah, so
maybe explain some of the basic Windows concepts, because
sure.
Me and you both are pretty advanced, right? But
Sure. So
I remember the first day I got Visual Studio, and I was like, "What is going on here, and what do I need to do?"
Sure. So a form is basically a representation of a Windows application. So if you're familiar with the Windows application when it opens up, that's your basic form. You have a bunch of controls that you can drag and drop onto your form. For example, a label control, which sets basic text here. Just change that to hello. You can select both of these, and just for demo purposes, we'll make this font nice and larger. And one of the keys here is whenever you need to change attributes or how the appearance or actions for these controls, we have this thing called the properties window, which you can change. In this case, I'm going to change the font here and make this 14, and we'll make it bold. So there we see, our basic action. Another thing is we have these snap lines. So if you ever need to align your controls, just a great feature to be able to make it really just rad to be able to align your controls.
Do that again.
Sure. So there we see our control. It'll tell us exactly what we want to do. The red line here is, if you can zoom in, it's actually aligning the text within the control. So great feature. So what we'll do is add to simple code. And what this is basically a click event. So you can think of it, it's event-based programming, meaning if a button clicks, if a text box change, you run specific events. In this case, I'm going to call messagebox.show, and that's just going to open up a message box. Remember, you get
Now this is where I get lost.
Sure.
How do you know how do you learn where to start? Messagebox.show. How do you learn these names?
Yeah, so that is probably a difficult thing, and once you start programming a little, you start getting experience with what objects do what. Right. But we actually have, I believe, an expansion for these, and if you just, I'm not sure if you were able to see that, you right-click IntelliSense, and you click Insert Expansion. These are really great for either experienced programmers that are sick of just having to get the language constructs right or syntax right, or beginning programmers. So here we actually see a whole list. If you needed to add an if statement, you can just double click here and say if, and we'll just default to true. And let's go ahead and just add another expansion. And this time we'll go down and we see there's this thing called messagebox.show. And we'll just type hello world. So really, I see the expansions as a great way for beginning programmers to learn what the specific syntax is and what the most common controls are. So if we just run our application here,
Now, how are you running? You're hitting the little run button up there?
yeah, just hitting the little run button.
Okay.
If I click button 1, we see hello world on our screen.
Oh, and that's a message box.
And there's our message box with the text, and we can make this as fancy as we want to. So there's our basic application. We can do, let's do a couple other things. Let's add a breakpoint. And the way to add a breakpoint so you can inspect values is you basically click on this line right here.
Okay.
And what it's going to do is we click start. And when I click on that button click event, it stops on the breakpoint. And we can jump in. And what we can do is actually look at these values simply by putting your mouse over it. We can inspect the values directly within our application. So there we're able to simply run our control, and we see our hello world message box, and just simple values again, things that you can easily do. Other things, we can mouse over different object types and see their particular values. So I see that this object, the button click was raised by button 1.
So breakpoints are a way to see how the app is actually running.
Right, exactly. So you can basically walk through your application and see how it's running.
Okay.
So just another thing that you may notice here is this green text is text that is new but saved. This yellow text is new code, but code that hasn't been saved. So if I just click save here, you'll see that it all turns green. So, and if I close our file and open it again, you'll see that all the coloring's gone. So it's nice and helpful to be able to see what code is new, what code isn't new. Couple other things, let's see. A lot of times you're navigating big sources of code. What we can do is actually use outlining and collapse this to definitions. And that you basically see the definitions within your code. So I know within this namespace, I have a class called form, and it has this form1 constructor and a button click event. So some basic things. Also, you can basically tell it to close all but this if you have a lot of windows open. It's a pretty convenient feature to use, and it'll close all your different windows in Visual Studio.